Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Today, we are joined by the lovely Jess Mears. How are you doing tonight, Jess?
I'm really great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So the topic on the table for tonight is why Clubhouse is awesome. Because you and I have been doing some fun things on there after just like a couple of random DMs happened where, I reached out to you and I was like, do you want to host a Clubhouse room with me? Because you had been doing more things on Clubhouse and Clubhouse makes me nervous. I'm super socially anxious. So the idea of like jumping into conversations like that, just the entire atmosphere that is Clubhouse is not really my scene. So I was like, let's talk to somebody who actually like seems to be doing it well. And then you said yes. And then awesome things happened afterwards. I feel like I definitely picked the right person to ask to help bring me into the Clubhouse. So what got you into like why did you decide that Clubhouse was the avenue?
So actually, I had a friend that I have been campaigning with since 2016. My friend Seth Levy. He and I stay in contact because we're friends outside of campaign season. And he's like, I really want to get on Clubhouse. And it's like, what is that? He's like, it's this new app. And I was like, okay. So I downloaded it. And there it said, well, I need an invitation. He's like, yeah, you need an invitation to get on. And so the next day, Richard Manzo let me in. And so you can join Clubhouse and get on the wait list. And if you have a contact that will let you in, you can get in without an invitation. So thanks to Richard Manzo for letting me in, I got into the club. And then once you're on Clubhouse, you can get invites and they kind of restore your invites as you send them out. So I got to call Seth like literally one day later and I was like, I'm in Clubhouse and invite him in. And it made him super happy. So it was a good feeling for me to like be a good friend and help my friend get something that he wanted. But what happened then after I joined Clubhouse, it was kind of like dead for the month of January. I didn't really have a lot of like luck using it, I guess. There weren't many conversations that I jumped into. And then in the month of February, it started to kind of just like take off. Like there's conversations happening all the time. People are trying to help people. If you're somebody who wants to start a business, there's going to be conversations on Clubhouse that are going to tell you about how to start a business. If you are trying to learn how to do meditation, somebody is going to be on Clubhouse teaching you meditation at some point. So all these kind of things to like help one another improve their lives, which to me is such a libertarian thing, like mutual aid and shared resources, shared knowledge and helping each other. I was like, this is a libertarian dream waiting to happen. And then I found out that one of the funders of this app is a man named Mark Andreessen, who created the internet browser. And he's an investor in this app. So I think he's probably along the libertarian ideology some ways. I've listened to him on some podcasts. And so it's just really cool to like look at this app from a libertarian perspective, and then also the people who built it and what they were trying to get out of creating the app. So how's that sound for how I got onto it?
That perfect answer. That was a much more thought out than how I got onto it. I just heard people talking about it and I have FOMO. So I just like download every app I get told about. And then I logged on once. And like I said, it's not necessarily my scene, especially if I'm not like on stage, just like listening to other people talk for forever without really knowing what I'm getting myself into wasn't really what I was looking for. If I wanted to just like listen to people talk, I'd like go listen to Part of the Problem or like, something else like where it was bite-sized. It was a very weird scenario originally, and I didn't really get to know it or understand how cool it could be until after, like you said, it really started to pop off. And then, not gonna lie, being on stage is more fun than being in the audience, right? Like,
Well, you're definitely someone that likes to participate. Other times people are like, and it also depends on your mood too. Like sometimes I might be running some errands or just doing anything, and if there's something that I see that's interesting on Clubhouse, because it's kind of like turning on the TV, you can scroll through it and find something you want to watch, and you may not find something you want to watch, or you may, and then you can choose it, and you can have the opportunity to also engage. So if you're in the mood to like talk to people or change the conversation, you can do that, but you can also just participate by just listening. And so that's something I like to do as well if it's something I'm interested in listening to.
that makes sense. Yeah, I've definitely found a couple of rooms where it was just a conversation that I would never have even thought of existing. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
And actually, I think the niche that I found that surprised me the most was there's like concerts going on Clubhouse with like real
Yes.
musicians. Like I
Yes.
found a couple of like open mic nights originally, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. And then I went back a couple of days later into like the same kind of circle of people's rooms, and I was like, wait, these are like real musicians playing real concerts, like actual famous people.
Yes. So I have two things to tell you about there. One of the musicians from Mumford and Sons is connected to one of my friends, and he invited me to this room of this guy playing the banjo. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And he's like, "He's in Mumford and Sons." I was like, Wait, what? Like, seriously?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is my friend." I'm like, "Okay,
Nice.
that's cool." Like, if you can't go to concerts, this is one cool way that musicians can have a creative outlet. And so with Clubhouse, if you're listening and you're not a user already, there's the room sizes vary. So you could have hundreds and thousands of people, like, well, up to 8.5 thousand right now. Um, 8,500
Mhm.
is the max that you can have in a room, or you could have just like one person in a room talking to themselves. So I started
Been
recently,
there.
like, yeah, I've gone from like listening in and trying to engage in these larger rooms that are like more knowledge share to more like smaller, intimate conversations. So
Mhm.
it's very much like as if you were to go to a convention and you can go sit in a large hall with a panel of people and listen to that convention talk, or you can go out into the hallway and mingle and network. And that's kind of like the vibe of Clubhouse. And so I've been networking and having like conversations with smaller groups of people. And literally, a man wrote a song for me on Clubhouse. He released his album. It's called The Clubhouse Sessions. His name is Brandon, and he is in the Mises Caucus. So he's a Libertarian Party affiliate person. And his name's Brandon Christensen, and he's a musician and out of work right now because California is completely closed down. So he's been
Mhm.
spending time on Clubhouse. He also sings and does music for church. So he plays like spiritual music on Clubhouse and does like concerts for an hour each night. But he'll also like
Cool.
join in the conversation, and we'll have like a conversation with just people, and he's written songs about these conversations. So there's this woman named Lalitha, and she is into robotic agriculture, and she can't wait to grow mushrooms on Mars. So he wrote a song called Mushrooms on Mars. So he released this album on Spotify, and he did an album release party on Clubhouse for the songs that he wrote for people on Clubhouse.
That is so awesome. That's
Like, no one's
like
written
just
a
the
song
most
for me
genuine, wholesome
ever.
story.
It is so
Yeah,
cute.
that's
It's
so
like I'm
wholesome.
making friends on Clubhouse and learning.
That, yeah, I mean, you can't really, that's really the two best things you can do with your day is make friends and learn things. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of my favorite two things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely have found that, yeah, I judged Clubhouse a little too hard too fast, and I'm glad that I gave it like a second chance. I really was not expecting what happened with our first room though. Like I messaged you and I messaged
Yeah.
Justin Amash, who I did not think would actually respond to me. I messaged him after you because I asked him if he wanted to host one with you and me. Because I was like, if I throw Jess's name in here, he might actually say yes. Which he did. And I was like, okay, so already this is going better than I thought it would, because I have Jess Mears and Justin Amash actually agreeing to do a thing with me. And then we do it, and we have Jack Hunter and Hannah Cox and Matt Kibbe and like literally everybody else I've ever wanted to talk to in the
And
libertarian
Terry
movement.
Kibbe,
Ever.
yeah.
Just like so many, like all of them. We were not really missing anyone that I cared about in that room. All the cool kids were there.
It went on for like 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and just like a super genuine conversation.
So our topic that we did was libertarian knowledge share, to talk about what we learned that week. And that was nice. Like, I thought it was really cool just to hear about what is it that people are spending their time either reading or catching up on. And that's really, I love just finding out what was something that you learned. And then after the people that were participating finished, then it just kind of became open dialogue, more so like get to know Justin. And I think this has been a really cool opportunity for Justin Amash to meet the libertarians, because during last year, it was difficult for him to get to have relationships with members of the party because of COVID and so many other things happening. So this has been kind of a way for Libertarian Party members to get to know him, ask him questions, and everything that he's talked about and had conversations with. I'm just like continually like, Justin's got an answer for everything, and he's super humble, and the way he approaches everything, I'm just kind of like, this is really awesome to have him be able to make these connections with people on this bizarre but cool platform.
Yeah. I am very glad that it really just kind of breaks down the societal barrier there. I mean, there's still the little bit of the hierarchy like between the stage and the audience, but other than that, like there's most rooms, or most of the rooms that I've been in, are pretty open about bringing people up on, and you can just talk to people. Like one of my friends was talking to MC Hammer the other day, and it's
That's
like,
so cool.
What, like, in what universe did you think that you'd just be able to sit in your bedroom on a Tuesday afternoon and talk to MC Hammer on your phone? Like,
so I have been debating if I want to live here in the Washington, D.C. area, or if I want to move, because this place is pretty expensive and I could save a lot of money living anywhere else in the country. And my job is virtual. So it's like, why stay here if I don't need to? And I am really into space. So if I move anywhere, I want it to be somewhat space related, because I want to continue to cultivate this interest I have in space. And one place I could move is to Starbase, to Brownsville, where Elon Musk is trying to build a city surrounded by SpaceX. And so I asked Jim Green, the chief scientist for NASA, what he thought I should do. And so it's just like, this is how I'm making decisions in my life now. I'm going on Clubhouse and just asking people, like the most like successful, intelligent people that I can find, questions about how to guide my life.
That is awesome. I could not. Yeah, that's kind of how I've been treating Twitter lately, because I actually like have a following there and people have interacted with me lately. Which is new for me. Like I used to be fairly decent at Facebook. Like growing up, I always had really solid engagement with my friends and stuff. So Facebook was my main thing. And I hated like Instagram and Twitter and basically all the rest of them, because I had like 100 followers and like would get 2 likes on everything I posted. And it just wasn't fun for me. Twitter's taken off lately. So that's kind of how I've been using Twitter. It's just like, if I don't know the answer to a question, I'll just tweet it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like Facebook has become a platform where It's to me, it's not super conducive to building and cultivating positive relationships. And at least with Twitter, I can share ideas, and the people that are criticizing my ideas are like strangers, but I'm getting the ideas out there. I feel like Facebook is so much of people in an echo chamber trying to they both agree mostly on the same idea, but they want to discuss like little tiny pieces of it. And at least on Twitter, I'm engaging with people with very wide perspectives and trying to have some kind of like idea sharing and getting it out there. So I love Twitter, but now I love Clubhouse because of the opportunities that it presents. Like I got to ask Ron Paul a question, and I've never met Ron Paul. One of the funders that I mentioned, Mark Andreessen, he is following me on Clubhouse. And this is a person who, if I can cultivate a relationship with him, it could be absolutely game changing for the things and initiatives I'm working on. He's an angel investor, and there's venture capitalists on Clubhouse, people who are investing in ideas. So I really see it as a great opportunity for somebody that has the drive and the ambition to better themselves. They can make it happen if they're just trying just a little bit. Like teeny bit of effort on this app goes a long way. People are willing to help each other out.
For sure. Yeah, that was the first community on Clubhouse that I really knew about, was the financial stuff. That was the first couple of rooms that I ever went in, was like pitch your business to these angel investors, kind of a like Shark Tank basically.
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of Bitcoin rooms, and there's now a link where you can see which clubs have the most people, which rooms are getting the most traction. So we can dig that up after this conversation and share it, so that way people can see like what's actually happening on Clubhouse before making the plunge. Like I've had a lot of people start off by being like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this app. And then they play around with it and it's really fun. My friend Heather and I did a room a few days ago called Skyline Chili, Sick or Ick. And people that just dropped in, because people can just walk into your room if you have it open. You can also close them or have like limited access to them if you want to. But we just had it open because we just wanted to see who joined us. And this incredible woman who loves Tesla, she lives in California. She was just in Cincinnati a week ago and tried Skyline for the first time and told me like gave the best sales pitch for it ever. She absolutely loved it. So like you can talk about big ideas or like hold a room on whether or not Skyline chili is delicious.
Or you can hold a room where everyone is just making goat noises.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's a thing that can also exist on Clubhouse. Yeah. I really loved our economists room the other day. That was super fun.
Yes.
We need to do that again.
I can give some context for anyone who is not familiar with what it means to be a goat or a bougie cat or an economist or a Ron Paul on Clubhouse. People are really quirky and do adorable things all of the time, and people's personalities are totally able to shine through on Clubhouse. Like you can't really have a whole lot of information about yourself. You can have one photo and then your bio and links to your Twitter and Instagram, and that's about it that you get for as far as what you can provide to the people you're interacting with without you use your voice. And we should mention that it's no camera. So love that aspect because you can be in your jammies and you don't have to be like worried about what's in your background or how do you look that day. And so
unlike this.
Yeah, like I literally asked you 2 weeks ago if we could not have this conversation because my face was breaking out because I had to wear these masks because of the pandemic and it causes like face breakouts. So it's like, yeah, so there's like that concern of being willing for your face to be shown sometimes, but that is totally not a barrier on Clubhouse because your only face is like a picture. So you can change that picture as often as you want. And we've done a few fun rooms where we were economists and we read quotes from economists for about 45 minutes. And really, it's a good refresher to like read quotes sometimes, like to get into it. And so I had a really good time being Hayek.
Mm-hmm.
And then another day I was we had only Pauls as a room.
Nice.
So I took turns being a Rand Paul or a Ron Paul.
Would Paul Ryan also have been an option as
I mean,
a Paul?
I was kind of hoping more people would participate other than just a few, but I think if you tried to do this again and only Paul's room, then you could get a lot of variations on what is a Paul. But we
Right.
could say Ron Paul's only to the stage, and then I decided to switch and be Rand for a bit. And so this is one of the most beautiful things about Clubhouse and the way it works is while we were reading those Ron Paul quotes, my friend Brandon, that my new friend Brandon on Clubhouse that I don't know personally, but we've become networked on Clubhouse, he noticed there were a bunch of Ron Paul songs about milk. And so, yes. Ron Paul has a bunch of quotes about drinking raw milk. And so he wrote a song about raw milk related to Ron Paul, and it's so good.
Did you send that to the group chat? Because I feel
So,
like these words somehow mixed together sound familiar, as if you sent me that
unfortunately,
song.
the song is, I think I tweeted it last night, or a couple nights ago, was the concert. And that song, Ron Paul's Milk or something, was playing during Brandon's concert. And unfortunately, Brandon only recorded 3 of the Clubhouse session songs. And there's a whole bunch more now because he's getting inspiration from the people he's meeting all of the time on more songs that he can write. So there's so many good songs, and Brandon is an epic artist, and I hope that his songs actually really blow up because they're incredible, and he's so talented. He can take a concept and turn it into a song within 5 minutes, and it's an incredible. And all of his songs have a very different sound. Like he's got another song on the Clubhouse sessions besides Mushrooms on Mars and Space Opera is Status Seeking Monkeys. And it's got a totally different sound. So totally hyped for Brandon and his music. And the Ron Paul Milk song, can't wait for that to be recorded.
That's super cool. I have been very blessed, I would say, to find how interesting libertarians really are. We have a reputation, which my experience has only like codified so far and like confirmed, which is that like the majority of libertarians are like neckbeards that live in their mom's basements and like go to a meeting once a month. And like I said, like I've been an active member for 6 years now. I've met a lot of people that don't fit that description, but that description still is the majority of the people I've met. So, but this year, I've actually found a whole bunch of like actually really, really, really cool libertarians who are out there doing crazy, awesome stuff. I stumbled across somebody last night that started an online like dance instructor thing where that connects like instructors to students, and it has like an integration with the video like call feature to like actually like help show like the moves to do and stuff. Like it's like really intricate. I don't know shit about dancing, so I don't know it that well. I sent it
I'm
to
a
my friends
terrible
that are
dancer. I need some help, and like doing it in my home where nobody else is judging me besides some
Right.
robot would be super helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was just in I got added to a libertarian entrepreneur or Entrepreneurs for Liberty. That's what it was, because it was from Lauren from People for Liberty started the Facebook group. But I was just like, this is cool. I just got added to the Facebook group yesterday, and I'm like already finding like really interesting things. My friend found there's a company called, I think it's Global Wealth Management, something like that, or I can't completely recall the name, but it's a full-blown libertarian company that like helps get business owners like registered, gets their LLC, helps them do like all of their paperwork and all of that stuff. And like on a really libertarian basis of like, how do you pay the least amount of taxes and stay out of the government's hair the most, and like, how do you have an offshore bank account, and how do you like all of this like super like kind of out there super libertarian stuff on that. And where, you know, TD Ameritrade is never going to tell you like how to dodge taxes and have an offshore
Right.
company. Like
Yeah.
that's not a thing. Libertarians are cool.
I agree, and that's why majority of my friends and my community is surrounded by the liberty movement. And I definitely want to plug the liberty movement in the DC area, because there's people here that are like leading the movement nationally, and it's pretty awesome. So if anybody is in the DC area and wants to get connected with the liberty movement, I would love to help do that. And there's just a lot of awesome opportunities here. And apparently I should stay here because Jim Green from NASA suggests that I should stay here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let's see. We talked earlier about networking and how there's so many awesome things that can come from networking. And I think Clubhouse does such a great job of helping libertarians get networked with one another, more so than any other app that I've ever been on. Have you made some good connections with libertarians on Clubhouse?
I have. I will admit I'm not on there nearly as much as you are. But I've definitely had more than one really interesting connection. The first one, and the one that I appreciated, I think, the most, was actually your state chair, Patrick Hines, who I didn't even know of. I thought I knew most of the state chairs in the country, but I didn't. I had just had no idea who replaced JBH. I knew JBH as the DC chair, but I didn't know who came after him. And him and I had just a whole lot in common, and we've had a couple of really good conversations on Clubhouse, and I'm very much looking forward to what he's going to do in the Liberty movement. But I think the best part has been all the new people that I've gotten to talk to. All of these people who are coming into the rooms and just asking what some of us who've been in the movement for like 6 plus 10 years, like whatever, would consider like silly questions at this point. But I love silly questions like that, especially about liberty, like the questions that we answered for ourselves a long time ago about like, well, who would pave the roads? You know, like those aren't as like, I really enjoy those conversations because those like the people are asking it from a genuine point of view. And when you have those conversations on literally any other social media app, even if like I'm trying to have a really good, genuine conversation with somebody on Twitter about who would build the roads, there's 100 other dumbass libertarians in the replies going, yeah, but my roads, and like just trolling the person that I'm trying to have a good conversation with and just turning them off to liberty. Where on Clubhouse, I can actually just have these conversations, or better yet, Matt Kibbe or Justin Amash can have these conversations with that. I can just shut up and sit there and listen.
Yeah, I like that too. I don't like to give answers.
Yeah. It is fun being it was really weird. Like after that room that we hosted, now I do get called up to be a speaker in most of the rooms that I go into, especially if Matt is a moderator. And that is just a really weird feeling to like come into a room and have Matt Kibbe be like, oh, invite you to be a speaker. Not even, I didn't even raise my hand like more than once. He's just invited me to be a speaker without that. And I'm like, this is weird. This is like not a level of societal influence that I thought I would ever have. Like, or at least not
so
that quick.
Like for your audience that is still Clubhouse curious, like it's like calling a conference. Like imagine there's panelists on a conference. Like imagine one of those panelists says, you come up here. I want you to come talk now on the panel. Yeah, you come up. Just get up here. And you too. You come on the panel too. Come just right now. And that's like literally the concept that David just described as to how Clubhouse works. So there's like people who are speaking, and it can be a lot of people. It can be a little bit of people. It can be important people. It can be average people. It can be anyone who's speaking. And generally, you'll get a preview of who's in the room before you join it. And sometimes there's a topic, other times there's no topic. And then the rest of the individuals are in the audience, but they have an opportunity to ask to participate. And then anyone that's a moderator can then decide if the people should be able to participate. So it's really cool because it's like a podcast that's happening, but you can interrupt and change the conversation if they let you.
Yeah. That is the one kind of downside, but also upside, I think, to Clubhouse. It's a downside in my mind, but I think it's a societal problem that makes it feel like a downside, is that it's not like recorded. You can't, like, it's just in the moment, which is something that we don't really have right now. Like, even this, like, everything that I've done, almost every conversation I've had with another human over the last year, through the interwebs, was recorded and put on my YouTube channel or someone else's YouTube channel. And, you know, where it's just there for forever. And all these great conversations are like stored somewhere and you can go back and listen to them. Where Clubhouse, you can't. And that pissed me off for a while. And it really grinds my gears that I can't like go back and listen to that awesome conversation that I had like a couple days ago. And like, oh, how did Justin actually phrase that? You know, I can't like go back and answer those questions. And that drives me nuts. But I think it's a good thing in reality, because we don't have that like that value placed on our time anymore, because we can just go back and rewatch it. You don't have to remember a conversation, because you could just go back and re-listen to it if you have to. You know, you don't have to like really care about your time. You don't have to be somewhere at a certain time and like actually be in this room, because you could just like pause it, walk away, come back. Is how we've been living life, especially the last year. So I think Clubhouse kind of throws a monkey wrench into that evolution of society. I think it's a good thing, because it kind of scared me when I realized why I didn't like Clubhouse for that reason. And yeah, you just need to be able to be in the moment and just enjoy it and not worry about where it'll be later, who might hear it next time.
One of the cool things about that it's not recorded is when you hear something cool on a podcast and you want to share it with someone, you're like, oh, my friend actually should probably hear this conversation. You send it to them. Probably they're not going to listen to it because they're not going to make the time. And then also, you don't really have the conversation that you want to actually have with your friend. When you're sending your friend a podcast, it's like, hey, this is something I want to talk with you about, but I'm not going to use my own words. I'm going to just let this podcast do it. And Clubhouse is kind of like, you learn something or you feel something or something happens and you want to talk about it. What do you have to do when you want to talk about it with your friend? You have to have that conversation and actually tell them. Like, I can say, like, I learned this today and I learned it on Clubhouse. And I want to share something I learned on Clubhouse. I learned that on Monday, there is a helicopter on planet Mars. It's Perseverance is the hovercraft thing that landed in February. And it has this helicopter that it dropped a few days ago. And its name is Ingenuity. And the space people nicknamed it Jeannie. And Jeannie has been on her own for a couple days, just sitting there. And it gets down to negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit on Mars at night. So they had to find out, like, is Jeannie going to make it through the night for a little bit? So on Monday, Jeannie is going to fly because it's a robot, or it's a helicopter. And inside of Ingenuity is a little piece of the 1903 Wright Flyer. That was the first ever flight on Earth. The first ever flight on Mars is going to have a bit of the first flight on Earth on it. And I learned that on Clubhouse, and I've told like 50 people that thing because it is so cool. And I don't know where else I would have learned it. Like, it's basically like I'm dropping in on these space conversations and learning about space. And then if I have a question, I can ask a question. And like, I'm all about like, what's freedom in space going to look like? So it's really actually expanded my thinking about what I do as an activist. Like, I'm fighting for human liberty on Earth, but in 20 years, people are going to be able to visit space. The middle class will be able to go up to zero gravity. And that is like not that far off. Like 20 years from now, thinking about it, like I may be able to travel to space as if it were just a general flight across the country.
Yeah.
And so it's really made me start thinking about the future and what does freedom look like outside of planet Earth. And these are like places where my mind's going because I'm engaging in these conversations that are live in the moment. And the thing that's different to me about a Clubhouse conversation versus a podcast is a lot of times when I'm listening to a podcast, I start to tune out and it just becomes noise and I'm not actually getting value out of it. And that is kind of just a waste of your time. With Clubhouse, because it's live, because it's not recorded, because I have the opportunity to participate if I want to. Like if you want to participate, most chances you can usually get in on a conversation unless like Elon Musk is on it or like Edward Snowden was on a conversation the other day.
I was in that.
Yeah.
That was super cool.
So cool, right? So it's like we got to be part of something that nobody else gets to be part of unless they were there for it. And because it's limited time, it goes away, you can participate, it encourages active listening. So my ability to absorb information is so much greater than just a podcast. So it's cool.
Yeah, I was actually having a funny conversation with some friends last night. I think you're in that group chat too. I don't think you were part of that conversation. We were talking about one of my friends was listening to the Dave Smith, Michael Malice episode last night at 2 times the speed because podcasts are boring to him. And like I do speed up what I watch. Like I was homeschooled, and so high school I did like a DVD program of schooling, so it was like a videotaped classroom, and I did that at double the speed because class is boring. I could not imagine doing that to Michael Malice though, because he talks. he's like almost at my limit of like being able to understand what the fuck he's saying at normal speed. So that's crazy. But yeah, I definitely understand, feel what you mean. Where I'll watch podcasts as background noise half the time. That's usually the reason that I turn it on. It's like I'm doing something, but I want noise, and I don't want to just, and I want that noise to be beneficial. That's basically that's the difference between the music or the podcast. Like if I just want noise, I'll listen to music. But if I feel like I haven't accomplished enough yet today or need to like learn things also to feel like I had a good day, then I'll listen to a podcast as background noise. But it's still background noise. It's not engaging really at all.
Yeah. And in that case, like I think maybe even just silence or like some kind of like meditative music would be better for me personally, because you need that time away from like busyness and people and stuff for yourself. So like I've stopped listening to podcasts entirely for the most part and started listening to Clubhouse. So for me, and podcasting has been like, it like took off. Like it got so crazy where it was like podcasting is just like dominating as a form of media. And I think Clubhouse is almost disruptive to podcasting.
Yeah, I would love to hear Adam Curry's opinion of Clubhouse at some point in time, who's like the original podcast host. Okay. I would be very intrigued to see how he feels about Clubhouse. I haven't heard him talk about it at all. I follow him on Twitter. Actually, I think we follow each other on Twitter. But I heard he was on Joe Rogan a little while ago, but it was before Clubhouse became a thing, just talking about how podcasting became a thing, like before Apple was even doing it, like just the very concept of putting out content at that speed and having people like subscribe to it, like that whole concept was brand new. Yeah, I think Clubhouse is a huge disruptor, but I consider it like an evolutionary track of not a business competition kind of thing. I feel like we had kind of iffy stuff like news that kind of sucked. And so we went from that to like podcast and independent journalism, which is significantly better. And now we're kind of moving from that into an even better thing. And I see it more as like an evolution than like a disruption personally.
Mhm.
And that's as a podcaster. Like I wouldn't be totally sad if this whole like medium just became not really a thing in a little while, because I like doing this, but I do this for the conversations and for the networking and for the education. Like I like to be able to share brilliant people's opinions of things with my viewers. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to my viewers. There's a reason I don't do any of these shows by myself. Like I always have a guest because other people are smarter and more interesting sometimes. And so if this whole medium dies and gets replaced by Clubhouse, that I'm totally fine with that.
It's also a great way to network with people that you could have on your podcast, because all these people enjoy having conversations to begin with, and they
Mhm.
all think they have something interesting to talk about. So it's like,
They're not always right about that though.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, you're on my show now, which I probably wouldn't be a thing if we hadn't hung out on Clubhouse. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I guess that that does work.
Yeah. I've decided that I will not ask Justin to come on my show like until we're in real life friends,
Okay.
because I feel like he gets asked that by like everyone he meets. Probably every
Yeah.
libertarian has a podcast, so
Yeah.
every person like he follows back on Twitter to where they can DM him. I'm sure the first DM he gets from almost everybody is like, "Do you want to come on my podcast?" And I'm like, even though
Yeah.
we've had other conversations already, I still just don't want to be that guy. Like I would just much rather become his friend than have him on my podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the same for, there's a couple of people that are kind of in that boat where I'm like, I would love to have them on because they're brilliant, and it would definitely be good for me, right? Like to have Justin on my show. But I feel like building friendships with some of these people is significantly more important um than just like getting to have an episode with their face on a graphic and be able to like pat myself on the back like, yep, I
Yeah.
had Justin Amash on my show, so I'm a cool kid. Like Reed Coverdale hasn't done that yet, so ha ha ha. Like
I feel like it's so much more important and powerful to have people as part of your network than to
Mhm.
have them as like a guest or something. Like I've been
Yeah.
working really hard on growing my network lately,
Mhm.
basically trying to take advantage of the last couple months of the pandemic, since I think that things are going to be back to normal before people even know it. Like I see in 5 months society is basically resumed. So I have a really optimistic view on the future, and I'm like, okay, so we've got a couple more months of people like basically willing to take meetings, and I have been asking very important people, celebrities, podcasters that have huge networks and subscriber bases, and
Mhm.
having one-on-one meetings, because having like this public kind of conversation is fine and all to try to disseminate information and let people hear views that they may not have heard otherwise, but having somebody as a friend or a part of your network that you can then at the opportune time call and say, hey, let's do this together, I
Mhm.
think is so powerful. So I definitely am on the route of having somebody as your friend, and then kind of like as a guest on a show.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I definitely want to we'll leave names and stuff out of it, but I want to mention how you reached out to one of those people, because I would
Okay.
have never have thought about the wording that you used,
Mhm.
because I've always felt like when I message someone, I need to have a reason. Like I
Mhm.
messaged you to host a clubhouse room with me.
Mhm.
Like I was you accepted my friend request on Facebook, and I actually like the first thing I said, like I noticed that and I was sitting next to my dad, we were in the car, and I was like, can I DM somebody the second they accept my friend request? Is that a thing? But like I've always felt like you need a reason, you need a project or a thing, and you reached out and you said or you said something along the lines of, so that if there's something down the road, the introductions are already out of the way.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. I would have never have thought about that kind of wording. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So you mentioned a chat of Twitter users that we're in. And somebody posted something about a person that is a celebrity and also involved in politics. And I didn't know who that person was. And I looked at them and I noticed they were following me. And there's this magic technique when someone's following you and on Twitter where you can sometimes send them a message. And you can't do that with everyone on Twitter, but sometimes you can if they decide to have their DMs open. So I noticed that person was following me, looked up who they were, and I realized like this is a pretty important person that if I was networked with them could be very powerful. And I'm in politics. Politics is all about power and it's about how you use that power too. But in order to be influential in politics, you have to have power, whether or not it's your power or your power within your network because you have somebody that you're associated with. And that is politics 101. And so what I decided to do was to DM this guy and ask him for a meeting. And I didn't have anything like, it wasn't something specific that I knew that I needed to talk with this guy about, but knowing that he calls himself a classical liberal. I heard him. I did my research before meeting with him. He voted for Jo Jorgensen. I was deputy campaign manager on her campaign. He voted for Gary Johnson. I was Gary Johnson's advance person. So it's like, I have this experience and I have been involved with the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement since 2007. I've spent a lot of my life working on building this movement and trying to be effective. And in the last year or so, I've really learned that to get things done, you have to have a very powerful network. So I've been working on my network. And so as I showed David, because he knew about who this celebrity was, because I think you probably mentioned him in our group chat. And so I privately told David that I was able to secure a meeting with the celebrity. And we had a great 30-minute conversation about how we can work together in the future. And that's what I asked for. And that's what we did. And so now that we've had this conversation, I'm now connected with a top tier celebrity and that has doors that could open when the time is right. And the thing about when the time is right is you never know when that's going to happen. It could happen today, or it could happen in a year or 2 years. But when the time is right, that man and I had a 30-minute conversation. And after talking through some things, I think he trusts me enough to next time I have something to talk about, he's going to trust me that this is good information. And so you really have to lay that foundation in a relationship. And that comes a lot from my experience. I did 4 years of fundraising for the Libertarian Party. And you can't just say, David, I knew that you have $100 million because you sold your business for $100 million. I can't go, hey, David, I have this cause called the Libertarian Party, and we could sure win a lot more elections if you would give me $100 million. And you would say, what would you say to me?
I mean, I personally, like where I am right now, I would be totally fine with that because that's why I want to get rich, is so I can just sink it into libertarian campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah, but generally though,
people aren't that receptive to that.
Right. Yeah. But let's say like you just told me some important information. You told me that you want to be wealthy. Not very many people on the planet want to be wealthy. But the people who want to be wealthy are the people that are going to be wealthy. So I know this now about you. And I know that you're going to take the information you're learning. You're getting on Clubhouse. You are entering in, as you have told me, like how to invest rooms. You're learning about resources, about how to be savvy with your money. And in the last 48 minutes, I have learned that someday you're probably going to be someone that can donate to a cause that I'm a part of. So thanks for that information. I'm storing it away in my memory bank. But that is the beauty of networking, is that you can learn so much about people. And now I know that about you. And, we'll figure out how to work together. We've established a positive relationship hosting Clubhouse rooms and having Justin Amash and Matt Kibbe and Terry Kibbe and Jack and Hannah and amazing libertarians join us. And we've had positive experiences in doing that. And so it's like, we're going to work together and there's going to be an opportunity where we can like actually make some progress, and we don't know when it's going to happen,
Yeah.
But when it does happen, you're going to have money with you and I'm going to have celebrities.
There we go. Perfect. That is absolutely perfect. And something that I think is important, especially about like your meeting, uh, it was a meeting off of the social medias, like the
Yeah.
Clubhouse and the Twitter, and these things are super
Yeah.
useful, but we can't pretend that they're actually replacing life and
Right.
society completely. But you have this connection, and like you said, he's probably going to think next time you reach out to him like, oh, this is good information, because you had a real conversation. The like There's plenty of people that like follow me on Twitter who I've had like interactions with on Twitter, even some DM conversations that I don't have that. Right.
Yeah.
You still need to go off the social media, have a one-on-one real life conversation, whether that's in person or on the phone. That I don't think matters that much, but like you need a real conversation.
Yeah.
Like Kennedy follows me on Twitter and we've had some interactions, but I'm not going to go on her show anytime soon.
Well, it's all about building relationships. And once somebody knows that you're a person that would advocate for them, and like people will they'll reciprocate that. Like the important thing in the Liberty community is that we're advocating for one another. I have friends where we have been applying for the same job, and regardless of who got that job, I was rooting for both of us. Like it wasn't like it was a competition. So it's very much in this liberty movement. We can't just like talk about libertarian ideas. We really have to live them. And if you're living a liberty lifestyle, you're living where you're hoping for the best for every single person. I want you to be so wealthy because I think that's something that you want. And I think that like that would be great for you. It's like I want the best for everyone. I say my version of liberty is everyone gets to eat a lobster roll every single day, because I love lobster rolls and they're like $30. So it's kind of pricey, but I want to live in a society where people get the good stuff all the time. And so I would just want humans to live their best lives possible. And so that really has to start with like, even within the libertarian community, we have to advocate for one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. The infighting is something we talk about on the show constantly. So I want to actually like put that context on this, but it really has been nice. It's been the best weapon against the infighting that I've seen is the networking for a different goal, whether that's a campaign specifically or something outside of the party or the movement, but needing each other for something that you care about. There's somebody who I if you look at Twitter, me and this person you would assume are mortal enemies. We've not had a good interaction on Twitter at all this year. Like I think maybe once or twice, but we're still on a campaign together. We're still in like 18 group chats together. I have never worked on a libertarian project without her, and I hope I never do, because she's one of my best friends. And so that's the only reason why we haven't actually become the mortal enemies that most people on Twitter think we are, is because I can't. Like, if I actually burned that bridge the rest of the way, it would make working on this campaign together next to impossible. I'm a deputy campaign manager, and there are like the second in command on the comms team. Like, we need to work together.
Can I ask which campaign you're working on?
I'm working with Stacey Pressman for mayor of New York City.
That's awesome. You were in the Larry Sharp room on Clubhouse?
I was in and out for the day. I kept getting phone calls during that one. It was weird. Nobody calls me, and then I'm like in this room and I kept getting phone calls, and then some of them were like campaign people complaining about the like other things, and it was but I was definitely in there. It was a good time.
Yeah, like it's awesome to have these abilities to like make these connections. Like Stacy made a comment about school choice, and we were talking about school choice. Justin Amash was in this room, and Larry Sharp, and Stacy was, and Stacy said democratized education, and Matt Kibbe was like, I love the way you just messaged that, and he was like, that really inspired me. And so it was pretty awesome for Stacy to be able to have the ear of somebody who's a pretty loud voice in the liberty movement. Matt Kibbe has his own podcast. He's been with Freedom Works and Free the People, and he's got some really amazing things that he's working on, and he has a lot of influence. And now Stacy said something, 2 words, democratized education, that totally sparked some ideas. So it's like, that's the beauty of people coming together, using their voices, and not only just having voices of people that are deemed as important, because, it's like people can say genius things all the time. It's not just someone who has like Twitter followers or something, like,
Right.
and not saying that Stacy's somebody that's not important. Like, it's just, she was able to make a comment at that time that Matt overheard. And so like, I love how Clubhouse works in that way, where a campaign you're working on might have a little more wind in its sails than it did before that Clubhouse room.
Yeah. And I saw that come up. I was in a meeting we were in an all campaign meeting that was about to wrap up when you sent me that room, and I was like, Stacey, you need to get out of this meeting and go into this Clubhouse room. Your time's more valuable in this room than in this meeting.
Cool.
And
wise decision then.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're a good campaign operative.
I do my best.
Yeah.
So I saw you tweeted something about democratized education.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I wasn't in the room for that part of the conversation. So I was like, oh, Jess is using our messaging.
Yeah.
Because that was something that we had on the platform since like before I was on the campaign. Actually, that was like our first platform plank, and that we actually had like thought out with good messaging was democratized education. And yeah, I loved it too. It was a verbiage that I would never have thought of, really.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I like what you said about, you don't have to have Twitter followers or be somebody to say brilliant things, because I feel like that's something even I have a habit of, is like looking at how many followers somebody has before I like give a shit about what it was they said. And that's not exactly great. I mean, on Twitter, sometimes you have to, because if they've got like 12 followers and they're saying dumb shit, like just ignore them. But to be like, oh, well, they have less than 6 figures in followers, so I'm not going to care about what they have to say, is just a very toxic way to live life. And I think it's permeated a lot of society.
Yeah. Like, I think that engaging in social media and utilizing it can be an awesome thing, but I spend too much time on social media, and the time that I'm spending on it is time away from me reading books. So it's like, I've read few books in the last year, and I want to be a person that reads more books. I've listened to audiobooks, so I've read a couple, listened to a few audiobooks, but like, my time has been more spent on social media, and there's pros and cons to it. There's some trade-offs. Like, I have been able to have conversations with people that would be more difficult for me to reach if there wasn't a social media presence. But it also is like, I'm not reading books. Like, my bookshelf is calling my name, but so is Twitter. What am I going to do? And like, Twitter is what I've been doing more of. So I'm kind of like, I want to be a person who engages less in social media, but it's also like, as a political operative, also important too, that like, I know what's going on. Like, I'm up to speed. I know who's doing what, because that helps me with my job in politics.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to be in, where you can justify being a social media addict for your career, because I'm definitely in the same boat. And I've had I had a rule that I've been following fairly well, not great this past week, but it's been about a month now, where I don't do anything but message with my phone until noon. Like, I'll go on to Twitter and check the DMs, because there's too many important people in my life that only I know through Twitter. Like I don't have their numbers yet. So I'll go through the DMs, but I won't even click the like notification tab. I'll just let the notifications rack up until noon. I just don't do any of that.
Yeah.
And that's been great. But I broke that rule the other day and got quote treated by the devil himself. So, sometimes it was really like a hard thing because I could justify breaking my own rule because I got like 25 followers and interacting with one of my favorite actors in the world. And then on top of that, sometimes when I'm not on Twitter, like I took almost a whole day off of Twitter the other day and came back to just the biggest dumpster fire I've ever seen in Liberty Twitter because it was the day of the Kentucky LP tweet. And I was just like, okay. At the moment, I think I'm still glad I wasn't on Twitter for that day. But also, I could have probably have I wish my voice of like unity and common sense could have been part of that conversation a little bit faster because I had to jump in way late. And then I was able to kind of help smooth things out by hosting a conversation between like Dave Smith and a rabbi from Kentucky and like kind of do something, but I was way late to the party and I felt like I definitely could have done more good if I was on social media that day. And so it's definitely, it's a dangerous game to put that much value in social media over like real life or reading books or like you said earlier about like meditating and like there's just so many things you should be doing for your life that if you let social media be your life, it's a problem.
I try with the way that I use Twitter, and I have deleted Facebook and Facebook Messenger from my phone, so I can only access it on like a laptop browser. And I'd like to try to do that with Twitter, but there's just too many times where like Twitter's all about breaking news, what's happening in the moment. But I try not to let what is happening on Twitter drive anything that I'm tweeting about. Like everybody's been doing the infrastructure jokes, and yours was really cute. I liked it. And I was like, do I want to do an infrastructure joke? And I'm like, no, I'm trying to have my own unique ideas and my own perspective. And that's what I'm trying to get out there. So that way people see me as somebody who's got an interesting take and that my takes aren't like based upon like what's trending or what are people bashing. And so I try to kind of like not let the trends depict what it is I'm tweeting about.
That's fair. I definitely I go back and forth on that one personally. The infrastructure one was just too funny. Like there's just I don't know, it's kind of like the A men and A women one where I couldn't let it go. There's just too many puns and jokes to be made on that topic to not go into the trending sphere.
Yeah. Am I infrastructure?
Are you infrastructure? I think so, because you're a key piece to my network and my structure, that's for sure.
We're all infrastructure these days.
We're all infrastructure. I am kind of enjoying the fact that conversation is happening and everyone's making fun of Biden for this shit because like it's not like this is the first time that we've had an infrastructure bill that was full of random bullshit that had nothing to do with infrastructure. This has happened every year for the last like couple hundred years, right? Like this isn't new at all. But at least we're finally making fun of somebody for it. Even if it's just Twitter jokes, it's still better than it just getting swept under the rug and no one knows about it.
Can I take your podcast to a dark turn?
Of course.
Okay. So I went on a date a couple years ago with a staffer that works for a Democratic congressman. And on our first date, we went for a really nice long walk along Georgetown and around the monuments and got to know each other. And one of the things we discussed was cannabis. And he told me that in the White House or in Congress, like cannabis is like a no-no. Like if you're a cannabis user, you don't talk about it. And like you certainly don't want your member of Congress to know that you are a cannabis user. So that was a conversation we had like a couple years ago. And he and I have stayed friends. And on January 6th, he was super, super rattled. This is a guy who works hard, and like congressional staffers definitely have a work addiction problem, like all of them. I think I can't speak in generalizations, but okay, anybody who is a congressional staffer should probably even agree with me that like they all have a problem with working too much.
Yep.
So I'll stand by that one.
Mhm.
But he works too much, and it's not healthy, because what happened on January 6th has made him so destroyed inside. And then last Friday, somebody was hit when a car hit a barrier outside of one of the Capitol buildings, or outside of a Senate office or something. And he knew the person that died, and he is not good. Like, this guy is not okay. And my friend, I'm really concerned about right now, but I'm also concerned about how the Biden White House is firing people for cannabis consumption. And it's like, you're putting these people in intense work environments where they're asked to work beyond what they should be doing. And you're saying that they can't engage in an activity that is a de-stressor for so many people, that helps with mental health, the way that people drink alcohol. So you're asking people that to say, like, to avoid consuming cannabis to keep their jobs. So what's that going to do? Drive them to alcohol, to painkillers, to other things that they're going to get addicted to. Cannabis is non-addictive. It's non-disruptive for the most of the people that use it. And I cannot believe that we have currently two people in the White House that had been on the campaign trail advocating for things like criminal justice reform, and starting to talk about cannabis more, and being open about cannabis being a policy that's popular with people and that people like. But within their own White House, they're not even allowed to. The people that work there can't use this substance. And then people like my friend, who his mental health is eroded to a point where I'm concerned about his well-being, and he has had to keep it secret that he uses cannabis. Like, that's just not right. There's something really wrong with our country when this is like, people in like 35 states are able to use cannabis, but the people that are serving the members of Congress and the White House have to keep this their dirty little secret.
Yeah. And it's not like there isn't already a drug problem in Congress. Like, I feel like cannabis is the least bad thing you could do. I mean, you mentioned like painkillers and alcohol.
Yeah.
I've heard plenty of stories of worse things, like a little bit further down the rabbit hole than those too. I used to work on Wall Street, and it was a fairly similar situation. Like, I could watch my boss snort coke off of his desk, but like, if I was out like side smoking a joint and somebody important from my company saw me, like, that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. None at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned that they were on the campaign trail, like pushing for this stuff. And that's really what bothers me the most. Like, after I don't want to say we elected Biden, because it's not like I voted for him, but after we elected Biden, we were told, or first of all, we were told we had to elect Biden-Harris, otherwise we would never get legalized cannabis. So we did that. And then they were like, but wait, McConnell still exists. So we're going to pass this in the House to prove that we mean it. And we're going to hold it there until we can get McConnell out of where he is in the Senate. So you have to vote for these two literally brain dead morons from Georgia so that we can have legalized cannabis. And people in Georgia were like, okay, we believe you, because we're also stupid, apparently. And they did that, and it's still like nothing. We're sending cops to people's houses to take their guns. We're giving Raytheon $300 billion. We're doing all of these other things, still don't have cannabis. Chuck Schumer still hasn't seen the MORE Act, hasn't called a vote for it, hasn't done shit. I hate this country sometimes. It's it's so depressing.
Well, I think America is the best country currently on the planet. And I think about that sometimes like, should I leave? Where would I go? So we're here. And until space is an option, I'm going to do my best to try to make life on Earth the best that I possibly can. I want that day where we are all having our own version of a lobster roll for every meal. What
Mhm.
is yours? Like, what is your, like, life's really good if this is what we can do.
Hmm.
If every person on the planet could eat a lobster roll every day, I would look around and be like, yeah, we've done really well.
Mhm. Honestly, that lobster roll is pretty high up on my list too. It's one of my absolute favorite foods, like
Yeah.
ever.
Where do you live?
I'm in New York, so
Okay.
they're not necessarily common around here, which I
Yeah.
think is another reason why they're like so high up on
Yeah.
a pedestal. We have really good seafood where I am, so we do have like similar, but there's a bar in Jersey City that I used to go to a lot when I worked down there that had just a fantastic lobster roll, and I went there almost every Friday after work
Yeah.
because they
Imagine
had
if
a
every
sale.
day was lobster roll day.
That would be great. That would be
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody's just got like a big like Cuban cigar sized blunt and a lobster roll. I'm good.
And
That's
that's why I think people should be libertarians, because really our ideology is so that way every person is flourishing, like no matter
Mhm,
what that looks like how do you want to flourish? And so it's like, I want to flourish by, I want to have a lobster roll every day. So like that, I don't have that life right now.
mhm,
Maybe I will someday, but I would like to have it now, and I want it for everyone. So I think
mhm,
that if government wasn't in the way of so many things, preventing us from having our best lives.
mhm,
And it's even gotten to the point where people are, rather than helping people in America, they've decided to help people overseas, because they're like, why would I do this here when this, like, I'm paying money already for government to do these things.
mhm,
So how about I put my money where there isn't any government doing it? And there's many places where people are way more effective solving problems. Bill Gates spends his money in solving poverty and hunger, I think, in Africa, and invests a lot of money to try to help. And there's been like 1 billion people lifted out of poverty in like the last decade or something. So life on earth is getting better quickly.
mhm. Yeah, and you made a very important distinction there that I think is the difference between like libertarians and maybe like a democratic socialist, because most of what you said there, I feel like most Bernie people would be like, yeah, I agree with that, all of that too. But you said however you want to flourish, because you want a world where everyone could have a lobster roll
Mhm.
every night for dinner. You're not going to mandate that everyone has lobster rolls for dinner,
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
which
like,
is
'cause
that's the
maybe
difference.
maybe you're allergic to lobster rolls or something, like, that's a
Hmm.
thing. But I think that for every person, they need to choose what they want their life to look like and go and create it. And do you want to have wealth? Like, that's something I recently decided for myself. I have been a person who's been like, I work hard for causes. I don't make large income because I care about the cause. So why would I want to make a large income when I want the cause to have as much as it possibly can? And
Hmm.
that's been my mentality. But I've gotten to the point where I've learned and I've been inspired that if I were somebody who had a large bank account, I could fund the change I wish to see in the world. Like, I actually had researched one of the venture capitalists that I ran across on Clubhouse named Cyan Bannister. And if you look up Cyan Bannister, she has been a venture capitalist in a lot of like the sharing economy type of things.
Mhm.
And those things are such a huge benefit to my life. I love Airbnb. I would much rather stay in an Airbnb than a hotel.
Oh,
And
all
it is
day.
because people like Cyan were venture capitalists investing in these things to help them get off the ground. Otherwise, they wouldn't have existed. And now I'm kind of like, I see the value in being somebody with some massive pockets. And now I personally I want to be a billionaire.
Hmm. Amen. Amen to
And
that.
I want you to be a billionaire.
We'll get there. I'm still kind of in the boat that you were talking about earlier though, because as I am volunteering on like 8
Yeah.
different projects right now, and I definitely can relate to what you were talking about of like not wanting to really make a lot of money. Like especially like Tulsi was the last person that I actually like made good, like not good money, like made any kind of money from.
Yeah.
And that was like super sporadic. Like I was a volunteer for her that did a couple of random gigs, like for a contractor that the campaign hired out to get just like a little bit of dough to like feed myself and pay my phone bill and stuff like that. And even that was a little bit hard. Like I ended up running a phone bank for them for about a month and a half, and they asked me how much how much I wanted to be able to do it for them. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't like, I had no idea how to answer that question because I didn't
Yeah.
want to say too much because I don't want to take money from, like, I know that
Yeah.
I know how strapped of a campaign that was.
Right.
So I'm not trying to just take money from a campaign, but also like living and eating is nice. So you have to find that middle ground, and it's really difficult.
I have a suggestion that I heard on a podcast, and it's called having a no list. So everyone has a to-do list of all the things you need to do, and myself included. I said earlier that I want to read books, not making time for books. So there's all these things I want to accomplish. And what I had to do was I audited my life in January and went through every single component of my life to figure out what do I want in this component, and am I actively working to try to get those things. And I
Hmm.
realized in a lot of areas of my life I'm not actively investing the time I need for those things. So I heard this technique on a podcast called having a no list. Basically, every time there's something that comes to you where you get a chance to say yes or no, you get to choose yes or no. Is this going towards accomplishing your goals? Those things that you want to do? Yes, then say yes. No, say no. And then
Mm.
when you say no, record it on your no list, because as you start tracking the things you say no to, you're going to look back, and a few months down the road, you're going to look at those no's and you're going to be like, why was I ever even contemplating a yes? Like that didn't help me get to where I am now. And because I said no, I am where I am now. So track your no's, because it actually is super vital towards accomplishing your goals. So you'll get closer to being a rich bitch if you have a no list, and get excited about your no list. Like every time you say no, just be like, yes, I said no. I said no. And then put it down. And like I have had 2 jobs come to me in the last week. I said no
Nice.
because it could help me with my goals, but not right now. That's not the right thing for me right now. So
Hmm.
no. And I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic about that no.
Mm. I can actually relate. I also turned down 2 jobs this week
Look
that
at
were
that.
just not at all. One of them was like a random 2 week gig that would have cost me like 3 or 4 days worth of work just to get there. So
Yeah.
that was just kind of silly. But yeah, I am trying to get better at that. That's something that I'm very bad at. I'm very bad at no's. I
Yeah.
am a people pleaser to the max. So
Learn
I w-
learn that lesson, because as soon as you gain control over the ability to say no, like your success rate gets incredibly higher towards the things you want. And you have to know what you want first.
Mhm.
So, and then something else that I've been doing is like one thing I want is a libertarian in the White House. And when I say that to people, sometimes they laugh at me.
Mhm.
They think that's foolish or it's silly, but that's what I want.
Mhm.
And so what I did was I thought about it and I was like, that is a big one. And that's probably a really difficult one. And I thought, do I want to have goals that are more achievable? So that way I have my fallback goals. And I was like, maybe I should make some fallback goals because my real goal may not be that achievable, or it might be hard and it may not be possible. And then I was like, no, I am not, this is not who I am. I'm not going to make fallback goals. This is my goal, a libertarian in the White House. So what I did was I said, the only way for me to actually make that happen is to have bigger goals. So I decided to make my goals even bigger. And I will not share now what my new goals are. I've told you my one goal, but I made dreams that were a million times bigger than my goal of a libertarian in the White House. So now that I have thought about big goals and it's made my mind like, there's like, we have walls in our brain and we put them there. And you have to actually work to remove those walls. And once you have the walls are gone, you realize that everything is possible. And as soon as my dreams got so big that they're like insane, like all of the answers to my one goal are so much more clear now because I expanded my goals infinitely. So it's people like Elon Musk that dream big and don't let anything get in the way of what they want to achieve that actually achieve it. So my piece of advice that I would like to leave as we wrap this evening to anybody that ever listens to this podcast is think about what you want and have those dreams and realize that they're going to be possible, but dream bigger and 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 dream so big that you're just like, now the first dream I had is no longer even seemingly impossible. It's so real because it's right in front of you because you got all of the walls out of the way.
Amen. So before we do wrap up, I want to give you a chance to tell people how they can find you, how they can help you achieve this goal of a libertarian in the White House, or the bigger ones of you, like owning a whole country on Mars somewhere.
Yeah, farming on Mars. Or like, I mean, maybe I'll have a star or something. But let's see. I am prolifically using social media at this point in my life, and my handle is Just for Liberty, which is scrolling, and I'm on all of the social medias. And I am looking to in the next few weeks share a website where I'll be asking people to subscribe and let me have you as part of my community and let me update you with things as they're coming. So please be on the lookout for when I do a website launch.
Awesome. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming on. This was absolutely great.
Great to talk to you. And I'm sure I'll like talk to you like tonight on Clubhouse or tomorrow on Clubhouse or something.
Right. Especially with my 3-day weekend. Like I'm probably gonna spend a majority of it on Clubhouse because
especially if it rains. Is it gonna be rainy in New York?
No, it's supposed to be beautiful this weekend. So I'm actually super stoked. I'm gonna go for a hike on Saturday.
Nice.
It's gonna be good. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, the subscribe button is over there. I actually pointed in the right direction this time. I always mess that up. Click the like button, share it, tell all of your friends how awesome Jess is, and then go follow her on literally every social media because she's the best. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.